Hey guys, welcome to Critical Flick. Today I'll be reviewing Alien Romulus. So Alien Romulus is the newest installment in the Alien franchise, and I have to say, right off the bat, Alien 1 is probably my favorite film of all time. So I was really excited to see that a lot of people were saying this movie harkened back to that a lot. It paid a lot of homage to the first two Alien films, and I have to say, I left feeling pretty satisfied. This movie's directed by Fede Alvarez, who did the Evil Dead remake, and he also did Don't Breathe, so he was able to kind of use the same tension that he has used in those films and move it over into the Alien franchise. I always felt like the original Alien film is a real masterclass in how to use tension, and I think this movie does a good job of kind of replicating that. This movie actually takes place between the events of the first Alien film and Aliens, so it's interesting to kind of see that little gap there, what maybe would have taken place during that time. And I feel like it captured kind of the look of the first film while interjecting some more action from the second film. So I see a lot of people saying that it feels like those two movies combined, and I definitely get that. I do like that it takes kind of some of the best elements of the first film and the second film, kind of puts it together into one, while building on some of the lore and some of the storylines we've seen from the other Alien installments, whether that be Prometheus or Covenant. So there's a little bit for everyone in this one, in my opinion. It tells the story of a young woman named Rain, who's played by Kaylee Spaney, who has been on quite a run. I think she was phenomenal in Civil War. I think she was really good in Priscilla as well. And I think she brings a lot of good energy and a good performance to this film itself. There's a lot of physical acting for her in this one. She has a lot more to work with in this movie than a lot of the other characters. David Johnson plays Andy, who's a synthetic being who's kind of like the brother to Rain's character. Her parents died while she was younger and kind of left him with them to take care of her. He's this decommissioned synthetic that has a lot of issues going on. His programming is kind of wacky, and he struggles to communicate and kind of serve some different tasks. That changes throughout the film, but early on, I think he did a really good job of playing kind of two different characters. He plays this more like kind of lovable, very lighthearted character, and when that shifts later on in the film, I think he does a really good job. So I think those two performances are the best. All the other characters feel very disposable. They feel like they're kind of just there as cannon fodder for the aliens, and honestly, I didn't think they added a lot to the story, but I do think our two main characters did a really good job, and they do a good job of building the relationship between them and making you root for them and care about them throughout the film. And to go over kind of a basic synopsis of what happens in this movie, you have Andy and Rain, along with a group of her friends, trying to escape this mining planet that they're living on. They're basically in indentured servitude, forced to work in the mines to the point where they're basically going to die from the Weyland Corporation. They find out that there's this abandoned outpost that's floating in the orbit of their planet that contains some cryopods that they may be able to get into and use to travel across the universe to get to another planet that they're looking to get to, more of a paradise, instead of this dreary, dark mining planet. And it's really their only way out, or they'll be trapped there forever. So they're willing to take the risk to take one of their ships, go up there, get these cryopods, and get out of there. And obviously things go really, really wrong, and things get really gory and really horrible from there. I will say I will be going into spoilers in this review, so if you don't want to know anything, I would definitely recommend checking it out and coming back later. This is a movie that I think is more enjoyable if you don't know what's going to happen. The third act does get really wild, and I'm glad that they really went for it. So if you do check this one out, try not to watch anything before you see it, because what you find out about this outpost is something that you learn from basically the first scene of the movie. You find out that they had discovered kind of the abandoned remains of the Nostromo, and they find the xenomorph that was out in space and had become almost fossilized, and they bring it into their ship to study it, and then it obviously escapes, everything goes bad, all the people die, it creates a bunch of different aliens. So as you expect, things end up that way. I can't say enough about the cinematography of this movie and the overall production design. I think it looks phenomenal. Like I said, it does feel very reminiscent of that first Alien film while bleeding into the second film with some of the action set pieces. And I think it looked fantastic. There's some amazing practical effects that are used for both the settings and the actual xenomorphs themselves, and the face huggers, and everything that goes along with it looks so good, and looks like everything that I love about the Alien franchise really comes out in this movie. It feels very much like those involved in creating this film, particularly the director, love this franchise. It feels like a love letter to everything that Alien fans enjoy about the franchise. I will say it does feel extremely derivative at times, and it really is using some of the classic tropes from the film, even using direct lines and direct scenes, kind of recreating them in this movie. I personally really enjoyed that because I love fan service. I know people think it's a big criticism or, oh, it's lazy or anything like that, but this franchise has come so far from where it started in the 1970s to where it is today that I love that it felt like it almost came full circle and maybe can build off of that. I do know that we're getting an Alien show that's going to take place, I think, before Prometheus. So that'll be really interesting. And I would love to see Ridley Scott's vision of maybe where Prometheus was leading to go, kind of finishing that story. And maybe we'll get that one day. But I do love that this movie, like I said, does feel like just a real amalgamation of those first two films in the best way possible, in my opinion. This movie doesn't shy away from the gore and the graphic nature of this franchise, particularly when we get to the third act. There's a lot of intense scenes. There's a birthing scene in this movie that's very graphic. I also thought it was really interesting their take on showing the aliens inside the human body and how they're growing and going to burst out of them. They use this kind of X-ray device to see inside the body, and it looks pretty good. I think that visual scene was really intense and worked really well. It was well executed using kind of the practical effects there as well. So I like that they kind of switched it up a little bit. It wasn't kind of your classic, oh, obviously the face hugger gets on them, it gets inside of them and then bursts out. You kind of get to see a little more what's going on there, and I think it added some intensity to it. This movie really doesn't take its foot off the gas once it starts going, and that's something I really enjoyed about it. I think it's just under 2 hours long, and I thought it never felt slow. I never felt like it was ever trying to hold back from anything that it's going to show you. It's not to say that I thought the movie was absolutely perfect. There is one thing about that I thought was a little bit strange and not the best execution, and that's that there is a synthetic on this outpost when they arrive there. The synthetic is the exact same model as Ash from the first Alien film, and it was really odd because the actor Ian Holm, who played that character, passed away in 2020, but they used his likeness in kind of a strange deep fake methodology that didn't look perfect at times. It looked very uncanny, and it kind of took me out of the films at times when they decided to do that. I would have loved if they would have maybe went a different direction with that, because I did think it was slightly distracting. And maybe if it would have been a quick cameo or a quick appearance, but it's a very important character throughout the storyline because it becomes almost like the evil entity that's moving the story along. And I think it came off kind of weird and unsettling and not really in a good way. And I wish maybe they would have went a different direction with that. That's kind of a personal gripe. I don't think it looked great as well. I think the CGI just looked, like I said, uncanny and uncomfortable at times. As much as I did enjoy that visual effect, there is some solid CGI in this movie on top of the actual practical effects. There's also some really cool, what I imagine is wire work involving zero gravity that was well executed. There's a action set piece involving the acid blood of the aliens floating and our characters trying to move in between it without getting burned in zero gravity. I thought that added a lot of tension. The use of that zero gravity and gravity turning on and off inside the spaceship was actually, I think, really well done, and I think it added to the tension a lot more than I expected it to. Like I said, this movie is very much hanging its hat on its tension. I think it executes that particular element extremely well. And as I had mentioned earlier, this movie gets really wild in the third act. There's a character that you find out early on is pregnant, and you imagine that's going to lead to something later on the film, and it definitely does. She ends up getting injected with this serum that's being developed by Wayland Corp using kind of the DNA or the blood of the aliens. I believe it's the same serum that's used in Prometheus by the engineers when it's let onto Earth. That serum is supposed to be used in a way to make humans almost immortal or unstoppable, giving them kind of the abilities of the xenomorphs. And obviously things don't go perfect, things go horribly wrong, and it ends up that this baby comes out and it is half human, half xenomorph. It's this strange hybrid that looks very similar to the engineers in many ways. I do think, according to the lore, that humans and the engineers have the same DNA, so that would make sense why it would look like an engineer, but it's incredibly unsettling looking. It's really weird, and the whole time it's on screen, it's just so uncomfortable and so strange, and I'm glad that they took that risk and did it the way they did. And I think it works so well because it is a real person in practical effects in a costume. Robert Brobkowski, who is a basketball player who's extremely large, he's a huge guy who has a condition that makes him that large, and him in that makeup and having him move around and kind of his body shape and body type works perfectly for the role. So I love that they were able to cast a character instead of using a CGI effect and being able to do it in a way that makes it feel that much more real and that much more tangible. I think that's why this movie works really well for me, is because it feels so tangible. It feels so much like those first few films. So I absolutely had a blast with it. So overall, if I were to rate Alien Romulus, I would give it a 9 out of 10. I think it's one of the best films I've seen this year. It's probably my second or third favorite movie, and I'm really excited to see where this franchise moves forward. Like I said, I completely understand a lot of the criticisms that people have with this movie about it feeling like it is just kind of using stuff from previous Alien movies and just making a new one. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I love the idea of how they use those classic scenes and classic set pieces and bring it into the modern world and the modern technology we have today. Even though those films still look great and still hold up perfectly, I love kind of this new take on it. But I do understand why people want to see something new and something maybe a little more original, but I personally had a great time with it as an Alien fan. It's kind of strange. I've seen that people have this as like a top 3 Alien movie, and I've had people have this as like the worst Alien movie. So I really think it comes down to if you're on board with it feeling like it is replicating some of the things from the original films and not maybe moving the story too much forward. I think it does build on the lore just a little bit. It's able to move things forward in a way that I could see another film. It's maybe excited for another movie. I kind of wish we would have got more from the cliffhanger from Covenant, but I do like that this is just, I think it's a great movie, and I do love the new addition to the franchise. And like I said, I'm hoping to see more. I'm hoping the show's really good, and I think it's just revitalized maybe some passion and love around this franchise, and has people revisiting some of those older movies that maybe people didn't love before, like Prometheus, Covenant, Alien 3, Resurrection. I do think 3 and Resurrection still aren't great, but I do think it's great that people are going back to them and kind of revisiting them in a different light. So it's fun. I just think it's fun that we have a new installment, a good Alien movie in my opinion, and I'm just excited about it. So if you end up checking out Alien Romulus, let me know what you thought about it. I love to hear people's opinions. I want to know how it ranks in the franchise for you. Like I said, it seems like it's top 3 or bottom 3 for people. It doesn't feel like there's an in-between. So make sure you share those opinions, share your rankings. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. See you guys next time.